Hello, guys, and welcome to Indiana Sports Connection. I have Kent Sterling coming on the show here in just a few minutes. He should be logging in, and we're going to talk about the Indiana Hoosiers college football playoff game tonight at 8 o'clock. And the more and more I look into these matchups and everything going on with the team and how this is going to play out. We'll talk about the coaching matchup, what Indiana's defense has to do to stop Notre Dame on the run. And Indiana is the best team. I mean, there are a lot of things that I don't think people are talking about in this game, but Indiana is the best team that Notre Dame is going to face probably by far. I mean, the Texas A&M game, that seems like it was forever ago. Let me pull your comments up here. And I'm just going to, yeah, it is a fun day ahead, but I'm just going to give a minute here and give Kent a minute to get in here. And then we'll get on with the show. And yeah, I know Kent is going to some of the tailgates and all of that up there in South Bend. And maybe everybody knows this or not, but my wife is from South Bend. I got married in South Bend. I know a ton of Notre Dame fans. So we're going to talk about all of that and on this episode today because it's a very intriguing matchup. And I guess I'm understanding more and more the reversible jacket club and stuff like that. I have to say, I was always an Indiana first rooter, although Indiana's always been stinky, but I always rooted for Indiana first, and then I rooted for Notre Dame secondly. But let me text Kent here and see if he's had. This is the first time I've used this software, so down here, Indiana Sports Connection. I'm telling you, it is a work in progress. Just me and the hillbilly monkey over here. And just going to check out this link, see what is going on, and then we'll get on with the show. So I apologize about that. Okay. All right. I figured something out here. But while we are waiting for Kent to come in, let's talk about our presenting sponsor. It is BetUS. Thank you to them for sponsoring the video today. Use my promo code Indiana125. I also have some big giveaways at 1,800 subscribers. I'm giving away a shirt from Rally House, which will be on this video. So leave your comments down below on this video. And here we go. These are the shirts I am giving away. I have some of these. I have some Indiana 76 shirts as well. But thank you to BetUS for sponsoring the video and for everybody to subscribing to the channel. I will tell you, when I first started making videos on this channel about Indiana football a lot, I did not really think they were going to get a ton of views. And as the season went on, they just got more and more and more views, up to 6,000 views. So that is unbelievable. The amount of excitement surrounding Indiana football, and it's really just, it's taken actually all of Indiana by storm. I mean, it's absolutely unreal. And if they could get it done in this game tonight, boy, it would be a different level for Indiana. And our AdSense revenue, we are almost up to $300 in AdSense revenue to give to T2T.org. So thank you to all of the veterans and for the holiday season supporting T2T.org here on Indiana Sports Connection. So but let's get into talking about some of the matchups in the game while we are waiting on Kent to come in here. I don't know if he's having some technical difficulties, but we will see what is happening. But I appreciate everybody being here. And the one matchup that I really want to watch is the wide receiver matchup. So Indiana just has far superior wide receivers to Notre Dame. That on Notre Dame's guys on the outside, although in my video the other day, Xavier Watts is a guy who is just an absolutely great tackler on the back end. Although he doesn't have elite speed to run up the alley, Notre Dame has young corners. So I could definitely see a scenario where, I mean, Surratt and Umar Cooper, this is going to be by far the best passing attack that Notre Dame has ever faced. And probably the best running attack. I mean, Indiana is a far better team than anybody Notre Dame has faced this year. And I mean, something I was thinking, I heard somebody say, well, all Riley Leonard does, all he does is win. And I'm just going to say, yeah, all he does is win unless he's playing Northern Illinois. So, I mean, there we go. Hello, Kent. Can you hear me okay?
I can. I'm good.
Thank you for joining me. I mean, first off, huge fan of your show, and I'm sure a lot of my viewers are a huge fan of your show as well. And I know you're heading up to the tailgates today. But tell me, what do you think is going to happen in the game tonight? We were just talking about it a little bit, but we're talking about the matchup. Of every aspect, I look at this game, and Indiana has a lot of the advantages in many, many ways. And I'll tell you one factoid I pulled up. It was like Notre Dame is 0-10 in these types of games since 1991. So, that's got them shaking in their boots. And I've watched a lot of these games they've played in, and they always look like they didn't belong. So what do you think preliminary, what's going to happen?
Oddly, 1991 was the last time these two teams hooked up, and that was at Notre Dame Stadium back in the day. And that didn't go terribly well for Indiana because of an onside kick that was recovered, if I remember right, and then a pick six, and it all kind of unspooled from there. But I think Indiana's in a good place. I think Indiana does exactly the thing you've got to be able to do to stop Notre Dame, and that's they've got the best run defense in college football. And Notre Dame, with Love, they want to run. They've got a good running quarterback, and so if Indiana can kind of stop that, especially on third down, if they get into like third down 4, third down 5, you've got to be able to stop this team from getting first downs on the ground. You got to make them throw. And then on the other side, I think Indiana, like the game is in the hands of Rourke. They're going to run the football a little bit, but if Rourke can get the ball on time and on target to open receivers, I think they're in pretty good shape. The game, as this is true with all football games, this isn't like, a revelatory statement. The team that makes fewer mistakes is going to win this game.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Hitting on something you just said there. I pulled up a stat is Notre Dame on 3rd and 7 and longer is 126th ranked in the nation on 3rd and 7 and longer. So, I mean, I could definitely see where if Indiana can stuff them on 1st and 2nd down, and Riley Leonard really just wants to run off tackle. I mean, I've watched a lot of his plays. He wants to run off tackle. And Indiana is very disciplined from what I see. They can bottle guys up and keep guys on the outside. So I like that running matchup. But then there's the whole, they have, higher caliber All-Americans that came out of high school. And
so did Michigan.
Yep. And that brings me to my next thing. I mean, I think Indiana is a lot more battle tested coming into this game. Looking at the games down the stretch, I mean, Indiana played Ohio State in what was probably the hardest place to play of any game all season. They beat Michigan at home, then Ohio State, then Purdue. And Notre Dame just hasn't played that caliber of team. So I just don't see what do you think their tools are going to be as sharpened for this game?
I think that these teams are very similar. Neither had a really hard road. Notre Dame did play A&M in the opener. They played Louisville. They played the academies, and the academies were pretty good this year. But the academies are never like, if Indiana played the academies, I think Indiana beat 2-0 too. Indiana didn't play Penn State. Indiana didn't play Oregon. All true, didn't play USC. Notre Dame did, but USC, I think the key to Indiana attacking Notre Dame successfully is in USC.
Yeah.
USC got it done offensively.
Yeah, and they were about to beat them before that pick six.
Yep. And so if you can keep away from those pick six situations and stay away from those turnovers, I think Indiana has a really good chance not to just win this game, but win it maybe by double digits. I think Indiana's better. And if the moment isn't too big for Indiana, I think that's really the key.
Yep.
And I think that's why Curt Cignetti is so important in this game. I think he's going to coach him up the way he's done the entire season. I would assume that his tone has been the same this entire week, and that the Indiana players feel like, okay, this is a game week. Let's go play a game. Not the game, but a game. Maybe lift our level a little bit, but go in, execute the fundamentals, and be who we are, and we're going to be able to win.
Exactly. And my next question for you, when did you really start to buy in to Curt Cignetti? Was it like week 5? I mean, what do you think about the whole, when he initially came in, he made all the grand, gestures and everything. But I mean, he's really been able to do it in a way that nobody ever has before. And it's fantastic to see. I mean, what do you think about just the whole overall this year?
I love the way he came in. I love the bluster. I love the idea of winning the offseason. I mean, when was the last time Indiana had a coach where you felt like you won the offseason? I felt like we were playing with the house's money, because at least we had a great time for the 8-month run-up to this season. You knew you were going to win the non-conference schedule because those 3 games are against really substandard opponents, although Notre Dame didn't get that done, did they, with Northern Illinois? But when they played Nebraska, the way they played Nebraska, I thought, okay, they're really good. I wasn't that impressed by the win against UCLA, but the Nebraska win and then going up to East Lansing and beating Michigan State up there, I thought, holy hell. It wasn't really the opponent as much as it was the fundamental execution of football.
Yeah.
Like Indiana didn't kick itself in the ass over and over and over again like it had in the past. They made tackles. They had great gap discipline defensively. The corners could cover. The safeties were where they were supposed to be. The offensive line was solid. They opened holes where they were supposed to be.
Yeah.
And the receivers caught the football, got it there on time and on target. They were a really fundamentally sound football team from the jump. And you could kind of see that. And you didn't believe it at first. You were like, well, this can't be Indiana somehow. But you know what it is. And when you've got a coach who's really, really organized, who's got kind of his ish together in his head, and he's got a team that will listen to instruction and then go execute to it, you got a chance to win a lot of games, and that's what Indiana did.
Yeah. Yeah, I call them like they're almost like militant in a way. I mean,
Yeah.
he's really has everybody trained in a way. I was at the spring game and just kind of got an up close look, and I was like, this is a different team than the Tom Allen team we saw before. I mean, they're trained, they know what to do, and they do play fast, physical, relentless. I mean, they do it all. But who? Let's go to the coaching matchup in this, because now I got a theory on this. Like Notre Dame's handing out towels for this game. Okay, they're copying Indiana. They're handing out towels. They gave their coach a contract extension. That all to me like just seems like you are very nervous. You want to shore up every loose end. This is our guy, our coach. We're going to hand out towels like you. And it has me thinking just a little bit of fear there, you know? And they're wearing black jerseys.
When I saw the T-shirts that they made with their national championships, including fencing.
Yeah.
So, and then said, Google us.
Yeah.
Like, Cignetti is so deep in their heads. And
yeah.
He's done the entire year. Like he did that with Purdue. And he put himself in Indiana. I've never seen it. Mallory was a terrific coach, but he didn't win like the psychological warfare to the extent it existed from 84 through 96. You know, nobody has done this. Tom Allen didn't do any of this. Kevin Wilson didn't. But Cignetti has Indiana's football kind of pedigree, or at least his, Cignetti's, in these other campuses and in their brains at a level that Indiana's never had before. I think that's a great reason for optimism, that Notre Dame is thinking about us.
Oh, yeah.
Who'd have thought?
Yeah, you look over and you see that staunch over there, you know, and it's fear, you know. That's how he looks the whole game. He's got that. Yeah, it doesn't matter. 66-0, or he's always like that. So
yep. He looks grim.
Yes.
It looks like he's coaching the next play, every single play. And Tom Allen, for as lovely a man as he is, I never got that feeling with him, that he was coaching the next play. He was either in the official's ear or he was celebrating maybe a 4-yard gain, jumping up and down and throwing his clipboard. And I was like, what the hell is this? I've never seen a coach even in high school behave like this. Now we got exactly the opposite.
Yeah, he'd lose it. We'd get like, penalties and things while he's going nuts, high-fiving people on the sideline. But so there's one thing on the defense I want to talk about, and then we'll talk a little bit about Indiana basketball, and then talk a little bit about how you got into YouTube and doing all of this stuff, because I love your show. My whole family watches it. So let's see here. So Leonard against cover 3. Here's one factoid. So he has really struggled against cover 3, and Indiana runs almost like primarily 78% of their plays are cover 3.
Yeah.
I really see that as when I look at where Leonard has succeeded in these last games, he's really been able to kind of just see that he has man-to-man coverage and his guy has a big advantage on the outside, and he's been able to just go to one of those. Where do you see Indiana being able to, I see a tip pass, interception in this game, if they could just cause some confusion on that defensive end. What do you think about that in this?
I think a lot of it comes down to pressure, and it comes down to the ability of Kamara, CJ West, excuse me, not just to get to Leonard, but to be able to stop the run in order to be able to get to Leonard. So I think the tackles are really important in stopping the run. If they try coming up the middle, those tackles have got to be solid. And then if you get them in a down and distance situation where, like you mentioned, the stats with 37, then you turn Kamara loose. And I think that he's kind of the wild card of the whole thing, that if you can get Kamara to Leonard and cause disruption, you can cause turnovers. And on the other side, you know, you've got a guy in Curtis Rourke. What's he got? 4 picks the entire year. I think Leonard's got 5, but in far fewer attempts.
Yeah.
I think that's a big advantage. I think the game, like all games, I think it's won on first down.
Yep.
If you can restrict them on first down and get them behind the sticks, you really bring that offense to you in a way that you can combat and you can really make life miserable for Riley Leonard. And who doesn't deserve it more than him? Guy who started his career at Duke and now to Notre Dame, two of the haughtiest universities in the entire world. I mean, what kind of a future is this guy trying to craft for himself going to those two schools, for God's sake?
I know. There are like a few schools in the nation where you go there and it's almost like you have a check for $1 million, and Duke and Notre Dame are like two of them. So
right.
Yeah, he's going to be in like the all alumni clubs like around the nation, you know. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, games like this, I mean, I ping pong in my brain like this going to happen. I think although it's not going to be snowy, it's snowing here right now. There's going to be that like dampness in the air. And
right.
I do think, the Purdue game showed us that Rourke can go out there with some wetness, some dampness. I heard Troy Aikman say this the other day. Said he could not throw a wet ball at all. I mean, I can't believe on the Monday night game the other day, it's like, so Riley Leonard, was born in South Carolina, and I believe he played somewhere else in the South, but
Alabama, I think.
Yeah. Played high school in Alabama, but Curtis Rourke is the Canadian Cannon. So wetness, he was born in dampness, you know, he's a mutter. His mutter was a mutter. So yeah, that's just my last. I could see that dampness just a little bit. And I heard people say this about the Ohio State game that were there. It was like this mist came down suddenly, and then that's when Indiana dropped and you were at the game. Well, you were at the Ohio State game as well, because it just kind of like all happened at the same time and I think Indiana wants a lot of revenge from that Ohio State game, how that kind of ended with it being 38-14 or 38. Yeah. In the end,
16,
right? Yeah. But yeah, Ohio State punched that last touchdown in, and
might be 15. I can't believe I can't remember.
Yep, it was 15. They went for 2.
Yeah, right.
They got it. And then, but let's now push on and talk a little bit about Indiana basketball, because I am more of like, I'm a huge lover of college basketball. And my first question, do you see Indiana, like, do you see this team like being able to kind of put it together here in this 2 weeks? They really kind of have 2 weeks to kind of get some resolve and kind of come up with a way to play defense. I've rewatched their last 4 games, and every time I hear somebody say Malik Renew is the best player, that guy is a turnstile on defense. I've watched him on the dunking end of many plays. So what do you just make of it with all of this? It's been kind of nuts since the summer till now.
And that's the thing. Indiana fans are watching defensive matchups off the ball. And that's the astute level of kind of appraisal that Indiana fans exert on this team. So when they see Renew standing under the bucket, kind of, not knowing exactly where the ball is, where his man is, and they give up uncontested layups, people get a little bit upset. And people outside of Indiana are like, what the hell's the matter with you? This guy's going for every once in a while. He's like 21-8. What are you worried about? Well, we're worried about defense. I don't know what Mike Woodson's worried about. Every single year, and this isn't just with Woodson, this goes back to Archie Miller and the last year of Tom Crean. So this is, 8 years?
Yeah, just about a decade.
We keep waiting for a team to come together like they used to back in the day, where guys kind of listened to the coach, balled out, and came together and understood that it's 5 got to play as 1. And Indiana just never gets there. And so this year, I'm trying to be optimistic again and looking at Ballo and Renew and Baco and Galloway and Rice and all these guys, Carlisle a little bit. One thing that I thought was really interesting the other night, I think it was the game against Minnesota. Carlisle's got the ball like top of the key extended on the right side, and he's holding it, and he looks at Goody and he waves Goody up to set a ball screen, and Goody kind of just looks at him, didn't shake his head no, but he didn't move off that spot. That's not what they were running.
Yeah, yeah.
You got all 5 guys running their own offense instead of running Woodson's or running what they're supposed to run, whoever coaches the offense. And you can't have that crap. You got to have guys who understand what all 5 are supposed to do, and all 5 get the bucket. It's not one guy going and getting the bucket. It's all 5 guys getting the bucket. And if you can't play that way, you can't come to Indiana. And that's a problem with Indiana, is Indiana in its recruiting does not go after the smart ball players who understand that 5 got to be 1. Guys like Braden Smith drives me nuts. Yeah, he was ranked 236 or whatever when he was at Westfield High School. Painter said, I don't care what his ranking is. I like him. I think I can coach that kid. And he's a Big Ten preseason player of the year, for God's sake, as a junior. What's Indiana doing? Indiana's going to like North Carolina, to Texas, to Florida, to New York, to New Jersey, trying to recruit all these 5-star guys who are just doing time till they get to the NBA and not trying to play basketball like this. And it drives Indiana fans nuts, and it should.
Oh, it does. And the tweets and stuff, because over the summer, I mean, like Miles Rice was tweeting that, he was going to challenge Braden Smith for the, I mean, you got to do something before you actually start saying something like that. I mean, this guy's played in the national championship game last year and has done a really good job. But that's where the recruiting at Indiana, I watch a ton of stuff about Matt Painter. And I mean, when I was a kid, I hated Purdue. I mean, I hated like Gene Cady and everything they did. But I mean, I look at what he does, and he goes to high schools. He's like, I'm not going to get a kid that's got like 7 tardies on his, report card.
Right.
I don't think we're doing that at Indiana. I think he wants to know, why'd you get 7 tardies? Why are you not where you're supposed to be? And we're just kind of looking for the next high flyer that somebody says, well, this Mbako guy might be able to play. Oh, like, we're kind of just throwing crap up against the wall, and none of it's really sticking at this point.
There's no plan. There's no culture. And Painter, and you can see it. The interesting thing with Painter is, like in 2012, he ebbed more toward athleticism and away from the guys he could coach. And then it all went south. Everything went, and he was like, okay, screw it. If I'm going to get fired, I'm going to get fired with my kind of players. So I'm going back to recruiting guys like Hummel and Martin, although he wasn't there long, Etuan Moore, Juwan Johnson. Those guys were team-first basketball players who had great upside. And if you look at the statistics before that wayward period where Painter got athletic, you look at the way they develop and the way their statistics year after year. Look at Trey Kaufman-Wren. That's a really interesting kid to me, from Silver Creek High School in southern Indiana. Indiana should have gotten him. I don't know why they didn't. He didn't play almost at all his first 2 years in West Lafayette. And this year, he comes out and balls. Painter is a guy, not only does he get the guys he can coach, but he's got guys who are bought into the process of development to the point where they don't mind sitting for a while. And that is completely antithetical of college basketball as it exists today. I don't know how he's got Caleb Furst still on that roster and not transferring someplace else. It is like, that's the greatest piece of psychology that I've ever heard of from a college coach. And Indiana's got none of that, 0. And Painter wanted to come to Indiana, but they took Leary instead of Painter, because he thought that he was going to be able to get the big fella who was Leary's teammate.
Greg Oster, was it Greg Ostertag?
He went to North Carolina. He died recently, and I can't believe I'm spacing.
And I just looked up his name actually just recently.
Great dude.
Yeah, big white dude. I remember that guy. But
Montross, Eric Montross.
Eric Montross. Yeah. Yep. And him and Leary played together, and it's just I was actually, when you were saying all that stuff, Caleb Furst, he played right over here in Fort Wayne, and my dad always talks about, he's like, that kid just wants to play at Purdue more than anything. He's like, he just wants to be at Purdue. That's all. I mean,
what the hell's the matter with him?
He started, I know it's not a pretty place to walk around, Purdue. I mean, I had a lot of friends that went there. it was definitely built by a bunch of engineers, that
Yeah.
didn't take the aesthetic into account.
No, they didn't.
But yeah, that kid, and he's got a hilarious video where he like plays Buddy the Elf that's out on YouTube. But that kid played at Blackhawk Christian and
Yeah.
just like wants to be at Purdue. Started as a freshman, then didn't play as a sophomore, then kind of worked his way back in and is now kind of there playing still. Yeah, it's the like I'm done talking to people about style of play. At
Yeah.
this point, I mean, Mike Woodson's gonna win the way that he wants to win. They shot like 35 threes in that last game. And I mean, although they shot a lot of threes, Bryson Tucker and Kanan Carlisle. And look, Kanan Carlisle had a stretch last year during the season for Stanford where he was 11 of 50 for 3-pointers. So he's not exactly like, lighting the world on fire. I just think, I mean, I remember Bob Knight, him saying this to Krzyzewski when he played for him. He said, like, you can't shoot the ball ever. Do not ever. He's like, to the point of this, if the world is about to end and the clock is winding down and you got the ball in your hands and the game is tied, just take us into overtime. That's what he told him. So,
and Bob Knight would go out and recruit shooters.
Yeah, and get the guys that can shoot and get this guy to block out and rebound. And, you need guys that really do the dirty work. I was with Mike Woodson. I mean, the first 2.5 years, I mean, where I think it's really come off the rails, I think he had guys there that kind of like I think Race Thompson, although he was very limited in how he could play, I think he knew how to like block out and rebound and be really like he could put his body out there inside and really make it physically difficult for guys inside. Where now, without that type of defensive, and he was limited offensively, but
yeah.
And for me, I mean, I lived in New York and I had tons of Knicks fans I knew during the 2000, like 13, 14, 15. And it was like deja vu all over again because it's almost the exact same thing happened with his New York team. They had veteran players. And then when it was like Jason Kidd who kind of ran the team and another guy left, the very next year they couldn't make the playoffs. And so everybody blamed Mike Woodson. And I kind of saw the exact same thing when Jackson Davis and Race Thompson left. He didn't have veteran guys there that were just going to like, you could roll the ball out there and they're like, win us a game,
You have a transfer in Luke Goody, who's really the leader on the team.
He is.
And that tells you about the importance of leadership in Mike Woodson's world. Because he didn't go out and recruit like a high school kid who can lead others. He had to go into the transfer portal and bring in a kid who can shit. And I don't even know if he was aware that Luke Goody's a good leader, just knew that he could shoot it a little bit and they needed a shooter. But you've got to build a team mentally and you've got to build a team physically. And I think that Woodson and Miller did just a horrible job of understanding that. I think Crean kind of forgot it after 2012 or so. They were still really good in 13.
Mm-hmm.
And Miller coming, that was a big deal. And Oladipo developing was a big deal. But then after that 13 team, there was such a vacuum of leadership that team just couldn't function. And then 16, they got the benefit of a weak Big Ten. And, it is what it is. But you've got college basketball coaches that Indiana seems to gravitate toward who just don't understand the functionality psychologically of basketball's operation. And that's a real problem. They need, and this is the worst thing for Woodson, and that's Cignetti. Because we're seeing how it's done correctly with Kurt Cignetti. And we're looking at Woodson and saying, well, what the hell? Like, it takes this guy 1 year to take a team of 85 scholarship guys, pivot it, and get to the college football championship. And we got a basketball team in its 4th year under this coach who just can't get it done. They don't look any better. Indiana doesn't look any better today than they did in his first year.
Yeah, that's his worst nightmare because you brought in 4 transfers. He brought in 27 transfers that he's got to communicate with and, learn about and all of that stuff. And, I mean, you can't communicate with 4 guys. I mean, that's what I've always thought the great thing about basketball is Indiana, even the high school game, you got all these small towns. It's easy to cobble together like 5 guys that can be good at basketball together. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a lot harder in football. So yeah, what Signetti is doing is a infinitely harder job for anybody to try to execute. And oh man, every day, how many comments I get? It's like, does he have a brother that coaches football or basketball? Does he have a brother? I'm like, he does have a brother, but I don't, he might be the first dual coach.
He's going to be like Tony Hinkle was for
Yeah,
football. He's going to
they'll
coach
let him.
football, basketball, and baseball.
There you go. You save. You just implement the same discipline and like all fronts. We could probably bring in some of the football players to play defense. Actually, he's probably got some guys there that'll actually stand under the basket and take a charge or something. The last thing about Indiana is when I saw their schedule come out, and here's where I think their biggest problem is moving into this Big Ten season is they have not played one close game all in November and December. When you blow teams out or you're getting blown out by somebody else, how much you're really going to learn about the guys you have? I mean, they haven't played a game where it came down to the last shot or came down to the last 3 minutes and you had to kind of score back and forth. That's where I really see, I don't know, 7 wins maybe in the Big Ten, because how can you really have faith in something you've just not seen them been able to? I mean, getting blown out by Louisville took the air out of a lot of people's sails.
Yeah, that was a terrible game. And then the game against Gonzaga wasn't great. And even the win against Providence in the Bahamas wasn't great. I mean, it was what it was, but it wasn't great. This team, you bring up a great point. Like, they don't, in games they're getting blown out of, they don't come back.
Yeah.
They don't make it close.
They stay down.
They accept defeat. And I think that's, I think that there are programs where NIL works really well. I don't think Indiana's one of them. I think it's, I remember I knew a guy who was an SID at a Power 5 university. And his team lost in the NCAA tournament, and all the guys in the locker room they just wanted their per diem. That's all they wanted. They were just interested in when I get my per diem. Oh, okay, thanks. They didn't care that they lost. It's like Indiana and Indiana's players, as well as coaches, that they're more about compensation than they are about success on the floor. And that kind of life, I can't abide when we talk about Indiana University basketball. This has got to be about us. It can't be about me. And when we see me-type basketball, and that's what we've seen for the last now 8+ years, it's really hard to watch. And it's been such a breath of fresh air having Indiana. I hope they keep winning. That gives us another week and a half, almost 2 weeks.
Yeah. Talking
about something else.
Exactly.
I don't want to sit down tomorrow at noon and watch Indiana play Chattanooga.
No, that's where, I mean, the people with the season tickets and everything, as much as they are, and it's like, I mean, you're not going to fill Assembly Hall in December is kind of a shame, and I mean, that's the best place to bring in for this team, you're not bringing in a top 5 team in December it's a real travesty. I mean, I think to a lot of people, and then you just got to kind of look at this Big Ten season, like how, I mean, I hate to say it's like, how bad is it going to get here? Yeah. And I agree. Indiana football needs to win this game tonight to give us something to keep people's minds. Cause mid-January, that's when it's like, it's cold here. Everybody's inside. These games are on at night, and people will really be focused on all of that.
Well, it's hard to keep his appointment viewing.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's just hard on a Tuesday night to think, oh, I get to watch Indiana basketball. It's almost like an assignment. It's like I got to watch Indiana basketball. Yeah, I don't want to have that kind of attitude toward Indiana basketball, but that's what I'm being given. I'm being given no reason to be enthusiastic about that program. And people these days, we need a reason. Habituation of a product Unless it's a really, really good product, that just doesn't work for us.
Well, we can still. I've been watching a lot of, and I don't know if you're entertained by this guy, Danny Wolf for Michigan.
Yeah.
Check him out. He is a great passer. I mean, what he's doing there. I've been watching them and Indiana as much because I like Dusty May. I like what he kind of brought in there and their style of play. And they're not world beaters. They've lost 3 games, but they're competitive. I mean,
Yeah.
they played a game the other night against, I think it was against UConn, it was against the top team, and they got behind, they got way ahead, then got a little bit behind, came back. It was like a 2-point game in the end. That's what you want in
Right.
your games, you know?
Dusty May can coach.
Yeah, because they're not going to get outworked for that long. They'll have little lulls and runs like every college basketball game, but yeah, he brings them back together, you know, and you don't see that out of Mike Woodson where they get blown out and they're off the rails and on a different planet, you know, and they just don't come back.
They all think that they can do what's necessary to lift their team. And basketball requires that you look at the other 4 guys and try to, with your play, lift them.
Yes.
You know what I mean, it's not about making buckets. It's about setting a screen. It's about blocking out. It's about making sure that somebody gets an open shot on the wing when they're open, instead of you trying to get to the bucket and throw up some slop. And that's kind of what the offense is. It's ball screen, ball screen, ball screen, you know, try to get to the bucket. And I can't take it anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the best thing about basketball, you learn what the guys around you love. You know, you're like, oh, Jimmy likes to make that cut. I'm going to pass it to him. And, you know, Jared likes to make that shot over there. So that's where he wants the ball. And you just don't see any of that.
Nope.
But let's just transition here at the end and talk about, so how did you get into the YouTube scene? I saw on your bio that you worked at Second City, so I did want to ask you a little bit about that. Like, what time did you work there? Did you ever rub elbows with like the great Bill Murray there? Or
no, good Lord, I'm not approaching 80.
No, I'm not.
You know,
well, I thought he still hung around there in Chicago a lot.
I took classes at Second City. I took classes at the Players Workshop at Second City. I took classes at Improv Olympic. Was in a variety of improv groups at the time, and you know, got to know this much. A guy like Matt Walsh, Farley.
Oh, very cool. Yeah,
hung out with him a few times. Only beers with Farley. I saw him on nights when it wasn't only beers, but as a beer drinking companion, he was awesome.
Yeah, that is an awesome story.
He was there at the same time. Stephen Colbert was there at the same time. It was prior to Tina Fey and Amy Poehler and Rachel Dratch being at Second City. But it was for somebody in like live communication, and I didn't even realize this as I was doing it.
Yeah.
If you're going to do live things, improvisation is at the core of the decision making that you've got to have when you do it. If you're going to do live radio, live TV, live YouTube, the ability to improvise and kind of hear what's going on and adjust to it as it's going on is really, really important. The ability to say yes, the ability to get rid of fear. There's nothing. I was in a group called Tribe. And what we did in Tribe, there were 5 of us. We went on stage we rehearsed like crazy, but we had no written bits. We had no scenes that we had rehearsed. We were 5 people who walked onto the stage and just started organically. 2 people would start a scene, maybe a third person would enter the scene. We'd have an audience of maybe 150, had no idea, none, what we were going to do through the hour and 15 minutes that we were all going to be on stage.
Just read and react.
It was terrifying. But as you go through it, it's no longer terrifying, and then nothing's terrifying.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It's like skydiving. The first time, you're probably afraid of jumping out of a plane. The 300th time, you're like, oh, I'm going to go jump out of a plane. This was very, very similar. So if you're going to do anything live, I would recommend highly taking improvisation classes. Number one, they're fun. You make friends. If you're in the Chicago area, That is a wonderful thing to do. Doug Vogel runs the Players Workshop at Second City now. He was a teacher of mine back in the day. John Favreau was a teacher of mine back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
Dave Keckner was at Improv Olympic, and it was just awesome. It was a great place to be creative. And I'm trying, Adam McKay, who directs all the Will Ferrell movies.
Yeah, he did.
Time, but operated kind of in a different orb. But I was aware of him.
And he's like the head writer on SNL, I believe.
And it was really Jeff Garland was at City then. So we would take a class, and then Garland would want an audience as he workshopped his one-man show. And so we'd sit and we'd watch, and he was just a very friendly, very, very funny guy. But I in doing this, I highly recommend doing that.
Then when did you kind of have the idea then to, start the YouTube channel and do like I saw some of your early videos, but like, when did you decide to really like you yourself get out in front of the camera? And then
I did it. I worked with a guy in St. Louis. I was in management forever. I was the program director at 1070 The Fan in Indy, and then went over to St. Louis, and I was a program director at 101 ESPN, with tremendous radio station at that time, sports talk. And I worked with a guy named Bernie Miklas, and Bernie was a columnist for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, and he did a 3-hour show for us. And at the Post-Dispatch, they made him do like a YouTube thing, and he called it Breakfast with Bernie.
Okay.
And I thought he could do it much better. And so I thought, how can I, because I'm no longer his boss, I'd moved back to Indianapolis at that point. I was like, how can I communicate with Bernie and tell him how he needs to adjust his show? And I thought, you know what? I'll do Breakfast with Kent. He'll understand that it's a parallel type thing, but he'll watch and he'll see what I'm doing, and he'll understand that he needs to pivot from what he's doing toward at least the formatics that I'm employing. And that's why I started. And then I enjoyed it, and I thought, you know what? I got to get better. I got to improve at this. So I would do it live on YouTube and then live on Facebook Live. And then I would do an afternoon on. So I was constantly churning content.
Yeah.
I needed to get better.
That's where it's difficult. I did stand-up comedy for 5 years in New York. And then when I started doing this, just the camera, and so it's technically harder to write like jokes on camera, I find, but it's a work in progress. I mean, I felt the same way. As soon as I saw myself, I'm like, I'm not good. I'm not good on camera. I need to like record myself for like 1,000 hours and then kind of go from there. But what you said about, I had opportunities. I worked at Bubba Gump Shrimp Company like a long time ago and knew a lot of people in improv groups as I worked in Times Square, and they all worked on Broadway, and they'd be like, hey, come to my improv group. And then once I started doing this, I can definitely see how that, helps. Cause you're great on the live performances. I mean, I'm just trying to work on these. I'm better at the editing process, is more where my art form lies. But
editing.
I hand it to you. I mean, you are the hardest working man in all of Indianapolis sports. I mean, to do 2 shows a day and then to go on the radio, and you go on with Dan Dockich in the afternoons. I mean, it's a lot. You keep everybody informed.
I like doing the work. It's fun, and I like doing it in a way that I think is correct. I don't think one of the problems with media on the whole is that like nobody's managing anybody. Nobody's managing product effectively because nobody's being asked to. They're asked to like lift revenue. They're asked to win awards, that kind of thing, that sort of the accountants and the lawyers understand as validation. Doing the work correctly and building a product correctly is kind of something that people just don't do. So I do it the best I can to do that. And I think like the radio people in Indianapolis, I see them, except for Kevin Bowen. Kevin Bowen works at it. He does 7 to 10 in the morning on the Fan. He works. He's at things. So he develops a perspective that you can only get if you're at things. And so I go to everything that the Colts do. I'm at the Colts. And in the past, I've gone to, like when Tom Allen was the coach at IU, when Kevin Wilson was, I was going down to those press conferences and developing relationships with them all the time. I think that there's only one way to do this right, and it's not just to show up at 59 past the hour, put your headphones on, and blather for 3 or 4 hours. I couldn't do it. I got to work at it to have stuff to talk about, and then the performance is what. I had a speech teacher in college. And so you go through you do these speeches, everybody did. And at the end of the semester, she said, I want to talk a little bit about each of you. And so she went around the room and she got to me and said, Kent, I would never teach anybody to speak publicly like you do, but I wouldn't change a thing. And I thought, I'm not sure whether that's criticism or praise. So I'll take it as praise. And I'll believe that somehow I have something unique enough to compel attention, regardless of like doing things completely like not by the book. And so I thought, okay, maybe there's something in here for me to do, but that's always stuck in my head. And so I don't really worry about the how much. I worry about the what a lot, and then hope that the how is good enough to be somehow enticing to people. It's about, we were always taught this in radio, and we always taught this in radio, that 80% of listeners are there for the what. They want the topic. 20% of the listeners are there for the who. And the job of a radio performer is to get the 80% who are there for the what to turn into that 20% and continue to grow those totals, while knowing that it's about a 4-to-1 ratio between the what and the who.
Exactly. Yeah. You're a natural. You convey a genuineness that, a lot of people can relate to. So,
That's nice. You've been terrific.
Being on live, it's tough. It's tough. But, the way that you do it and you bring like a certain energy to it. I can't explain it, but you have a way like Seinfeld of being negative, but in like a positive tone, if that makes any sense sometimes. So
that's probably how I maintain my credentials. As I work with.
I've got you off of talking about the Colts. I'm a huge Colts fan, but it's been tough some years for the Colts. But we got this game to look forward to tonight. That's all I got for everybody today. That's right. I got buying Indiana football. I got to leave you with this very last story because it always sticks in my head. I was like in a job interview once with this guy on Wall Street, and he saw that I went to Indiana University one year. He saw like IU, and he starts talking about it, and he says, we start talking about basketball, and I'm like, yeah, and the football team's not that good this year either. It was like October, and he's like, IU doesn't have a football team. He's like, they're just a basketball school. And this guy really thought nonetheless, I did not get the job because I was like, no, they do have a football team. They have helmets and jerseys. And this guy argued with me to the end of Indy. And it just always sticks in my head because there are people out there that didn't even think like a farm. He thought Indiana was just some farm school because he was like a New York hotshot, but it's like, so for them to win this game, I hope that guy is sitting there like, well, doggone it, Indiana does have a football team.
And he sent his kids there.
Yeah. And he was probably a big Notre Dame fan because, New Jersey is just full of Notre Dame fans. It's
good grief. How can you be a fan of Notre Dame? Honest to God. They got, there's Brian Kelly, and I know he's gone. It's good that he's gone. It's like, hey, Declan, get up on the scissor lift. Don't worry about the wind. And there goes Declan, dead.
Yeah.
Like they're killing their student volunteers. And I know that's just one, but my God, how can anybody root for a program who's got that in its lineage? That's just pathetic.
Yep. And Notre Dame's got a lot to prove. Brian Kelly kind of left saying, it's not you, it's not me, it's you or whatever, you know. It's
Yeah,
like I
yeah.
need to be able to get a better roster. That's why I can't win here.
And now he's learning. I hope he's
Yeah,
learning some humility at LSU.
he I hope he is, but I don't think he is. But well, thank you, Ken, for coming on. I appreciate it so much. And
I'm sorry I was a little bit late. I
no,
just
you're fine.
like sync. I don't know what was going on. I apologize.
No, it's all right. This is my first time actually having any guest on this show, and it'll probably be the last time because I'm not a big interviewer or whatever, you know, but I wanted to have you on because I know my fans, I know I'm a big basketball and I know there's a big crossover of this stuff. So have you on and talk. It was great. So thank you very much. And drive safe up there to the game. Roads might be a little slick. And
that's the way it goes. And that just means that everybody else, the road's going to be clear. It frightens away all the people who have no business being on the road anyway. And it gives me a clear shot up US 31.
It does. They got that highway the whole way now.
Beautiful. Don't have to like screw around with the lights in Kokomo anymore. You can just fly up there, fly back. It's perfect.
Good deal. Well, have fun at all the tailgates. I know there's a lot of alumni things at Mishawaka, a few I've seen online, but
looking forward to it. Thanks, Aaron.
Yep. Thank you, Kent, for being on. Have a great afternoon. Go Hoosiers.
Go Hoosiers.